The area that is now known as the Kaliningrad region was originally inhabited by the Old Prussians, a Baltic people with their own distinct culture and language. In the 13th century, the Teutonic Knights, a military and religious order, launched a crusade against the Old Prussians, aiming to conquer and Christianize the region. They succeeded after decades of warfare, establishing a powerful monastic state. One of their key foundations was the city of Königsberg, built in 1255 and named in honor of King Ottokar II of Bohemia. Over time, Königsberg became a major political, commercial, and cultural center in the region. Following the secularization of the Teutonic Order in 1525, the territory became the Duchy of Prussia, which was a vassal state under the Kingdom of Poland. By the 17th century, the duchy gained independence and later merged with Brandenburg to form Brandenburg Prussia, which evolved into the powerful Kingdom of Prussia. As Prussia rose to prominence in European politics, Königsberg and the surrounding region became firmly integrated into the German-speaking world, later becoming part of the German Empire in 1871. Throughout this long period, the area remained largely outside Russian influence, setting the stage for the dramatic changes that would occur in the 20th century. During the final stages of World War II, the Soviet Union launched a massive series of offensives into German-held territories. As it pushed westward toward Berlin, East Prussia, including the city of Königsberg, was a major stronghold of Nazi Germany and became a key target for Soviet forces. In late 1944 and early 1945, the Red Army began a brutal campaign to capture the region, facing fierce resistance from German troops and suffering heavy casualties. The fighting was intense, marked by sieges, bombardments, and urban warfare that devastated much of East Prussia's cities and countryside. In April 1945, after a prolonged siege, Königsberg finally fell to the Red Army. The capture of Königsberg was significant both strategically and symbolically, as it dealt a critical blow to German defenses in the east and opened the way for the Soviet advance deeper into German territory. The fall of East Prussia was accompanied by widespread suffering among the civilian population, with many fleeing westward to escape the violence. Those who remained endured harsh treatment as the Soviets viewed the region's German population with deep suspicion and hostility due to the atrocities committed during the war. The conquest of East Prussia marked one of the final and most dramatic territorial gains of the Soviet Union during the Second World War, laying the groundwork for the post-war reordering of borders that would soon follow. After the defeat of Nazi Germany, the victorious Allied powers gathered to decide the future of Europe's borders. At the Yalta and Potsdam conferences in 1945, it was agreed that the northern part of East Prussia, including the city of Königsberg, would be placed under Soviet control. This decision was part of the broader effort to punish Germany and prevent any future resurgence of militarism. Following the Soviet military occupation, the region was formally incorporated into the Soviet Union and became part of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. In 1946, Königsberg was renamed Kaliningrad in honor of Mikhail Kalinin, a Bolshevik revolutionary and a ceremonial head of state of the Soviet Union. The Soviet authorities began a sweeping transformation of the region, expelling the vast majority of the German population and resettling it with Soviet citizens, mainly from Russia and Belarus. German cultural traces were systematically erased, with street names, architecture, and historical monuments either destroyed or modified to reflect Soviet identity. The region was heavily militarized and largely closed to foreigners, reinforcing its strategic role as a Soviet outpost on the Baltic Sea. The post-war annexation of Kaliningrad marked one of the most striking examples of the territorial and demographic upheavals that reshaped Eastern Europe in the aftermath of World War II, and it permanently severed the region's centuries-old ties to German civilization. In the years following its incorporation into the Soviet Union, Kaliningrad quickly became one of the most heavily militarized regions in Europe. Its strategic location on the Baltic Sea, separated from the main territory of the Soviet Union, and bordering Poland and Lithuania, made it an ideal site for military installations, naval bases, and missile deployments. The region was closed off to foreigners, and much of its economy and infrastructure were geared towards supporting the Soviet military presence. Kaliningrad served as the headquarters of the Soviet Baltic Fleet, ensuring that the USSR maintained a powerful and constant naval presence in the Baltic Sea throughout the Cold War. Beyond its military significance, the region also became a symbol of Soviet strength and the shifting post-war order in Eastern Europe. While the broader Soviet bloc faced internal tensions and economic struggles, Kaliningrad remained tightly controlled and isolated, with limited cultural or economic exchange with neighboring states. Its existence as a Soviet exclave in the heart of Europe gave Moscow a permanent strategic foothold in the region and served as a constant reminder to NATO of the Soviet Union's reach. As East and West confronted each other across Europe's divided landscape, Kaliningrad's importance as a military stronghold and a geopolitical asset only grew, setting the stage for the challenges it would face after the collapse of the Soviet system. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 transformed Kaliningrad's position in Europe almost overnight. Once surrounded by fellow Soviet republics and Warsaw Pact allies, the region suddenly found itself geographically isolated, bordered by newly independent Lithuania and Poland, both of which would soon integrate into Western institutions like NATO and the European Union. As an exclave of the Russian Federation, Kaliningrad faced economic dislocation, supply challenges, and a growing sense of separation from the Russian heartland. Throughout the 1990s, the region struggled with economic hardship, corruption, and social problems, reflecting the broader turmoil of post-Soviet Russia. In the early 2000s, Moscow renewed its focus on Kaliningrad, seeking to stabilize the region through investment, infrastructure development, and efforts to make it a showcase of modern Russia's resilience. At the same time, Kaliningrad's strategic value only increased, particularly as tensions between Russia and the West began to grow. Military forces were reinforced and new weapon systems were deployed to the region, making it one of the most militarized areas in Europe once again. Today, Kaliningrad stands at the crossroads of East and West, a heavily fortified Russian outpost surrounded by NATO territory. It remains a focal point of geopolitical friction, symbolizing both Russia's historical claims in Europe and the unresolved tensions of the post-Cold War order. In summary, while the Kaliningrad region's earlier history is tied to medieval conquests and the shifting sovereignties of Teutonic, Prussian, and German rule, the Russian conquest in question refers primarily to the Soviet military takeover at the end of World War II. This event, followed by its formal incorporation into the Soviet Union through post-war agreements, laid the foundation for its modern status as a Russian exclave. The region's strategic military role during the Cold War and its ongoing geopolitical significance have maintained its importance in discussions of Russian territorial policy. This timeline highlights the evolution of Kaliningrad, from a historic center of East Prussia to a strategically significant territory under Soviet and now Russian control.